In a fresh blow to President Jacob Zuma, a South African inquiry can investigate the Gupta brothers. Somalis learned life-saving skills in first aid classes. And how Rwandan women support their families through traditional art. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, the heat continues to be turned up on South African President Jacob Zuma on Thursday as government judicial panel is primed to investigate allegations of influence peddling by his friends, the Gupta brothers. Now, the public prosecutor recommended that Zuma set up an inquiry into her findings, but instead Zuma tried to block the inquiry until a high court last month ordered him to establish one. The inquiry will look at whether the three Gupta brothers offered cabinet positions to former Deputy Finance Minister Jabisi Jonas and former lawmaker Feki Mentor. That's according to the government gazette. It will also examine whether Zuma or any member of government facilitated the unlawful awarding of contracts that benefited the Guptas. Zuma and the Guptas deny wrongdoing and say they are victims of a witch hunt. An internationally backed ceasefire monitoring team in South Sudan is asking the United Nations Security Council to determine whether leaders violating a peace treaty should face asset freezes, regional travel bans, or an arms embargo. The statement comes a day after Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, urged the body to impose an arms embargo. South Sudan has been embroiled in a civil war since 2013, when clashes erupted between forces loyal to former Vice President Riek Machar, battle troops supported President Salva Kiir. The fighting took on ethnic overtones, killing tens of thousands of people, causing widespread hunger, and forced a third of the population to flee. Relentless rain in Paris is causing authorities to scramble to safeguard residents. Officials suspended river traffic on Wednesday and closed several rail stations as water in the Seine River keeps rising. Several people died amid similar flooding in 2016, and the flood damage cost about €1 billion. VOA's Rasha Obasanjo reports.
The River Seine is rising. Heavy rains pounded Paris, and as of Wednesday, the water level had swelled more than 5 meters.
We are almost at the point of a natural catastrophe, which reminds us of the flood in 1910.
He's referring to the Great Flood of Paris, in which water levels rose more than 8 meters, causing thousands of Parisians to flee the low-lying areas of the city. Forecasts this year predict a rise in the Seine of closer to 6 meters, similar to storm surge levels from 2016.
We had been here 2 years ago. We actually went in a bateau mouche and looked at all the sites and the bridges, and it was right after that big flood. And we could see the feet of the Zouave at that time. So we wanted to come and see what it looks like, and it's up to, it looks like his waist now, so it's amazing to see the flooding.
Several people died from the 2016 flood. The famous Louvre Museum moved scores of artworks that year, and the water damage to the city cost about €1 billion. While a 6-meter rise in the Seine is well below the level where it would pose a danger to area residents, local authorities are playing it safe.
L'ensemble des acteurs
Various officials are looking into the forecast for Saturday of around 6 meters, maybe 6.1, and will make the appropriate decisions then. That might mean, for example, for transportation, notably for the SNCF, some additional rail suspensions. It could also mean, but this is absolutely not the case at this time, that parts of the roads could be affected.
Firefighters have begun evacuating houseboats, and authorities closed several rail stations serving tourist destinations like the Eiffel Tower and the Musée d'Orsay. Rasha Obasanjo, VOA News.
The World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, an event seen as the annual signature gathering of the global elite. Now, President Trump is expected to push his America First agenda, which calls for the restructuring of many of America's global trade deals. Henry Ridgwell reports from London.
For the world's political and business leaders, the annual World Economic Forum is the place to see and be seen. This year there is added stardust. Donald Trump arrives Thursday. the first sitting US president to attend since Bill Clinton in 2000.
We strongly believe in dialogue, and I think the fact that the president of the US is here also opens up for a discussion about more equitable globalization.
But it is Donald Trump's attitude to globalization and, by extension, free trade that is generating a tangible tension ahead of his speech that will close the summit Friday. The president signed an order Tuesday imposing steep import tariffs on washing machines and solar panels, repeating his view that the current trade system is bad for America.
These executive actions uphold the principle of fair trade and demonstrate to the world that the United States will not be taken advantage of anymore.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave the opening address to the forum Tuesday. His message contrasted sharply with that of President Trump.
Forces of protectionism are raising their heads against globalization. Their intention is not only to avoid globalization themselves, but also want to reverse its natural flow.
Sentiments shared by many other leaders at Davos, including America's European allies and big economies like China and Japan. So how will President Trump's America First agenda be received?
It's almost setting the agenda for a confrontation of some form. So I think there's going to be some anxiety because there's a sort of changing character of the international system, or at least changing character of America's engagement with it. And that's having a knock-on effect on other states, which are beginning increasingly to see that it's going to be a bit more competitive in the international order.
On the campaign trail, Donald Trump warned against the false song of globalism. The president will arrive in the spiritual heart of that globalism Thursday with a message many fellow participants may not want to hear. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Well, a Congolese entrepreneur is leading one of the world's largest container shipping companies, Maersk Line, in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Congo-Brazzaville. Her story is inspiring to thousands across the region. Africa 54's Paul Ndiho has a report.
Despite repeated hardships, Nancy Mbalai's ability to lead a male-dominated industry is amazing. As the Chief Finance Officer for Maersk Line International, she oversees the Democratic Republic of Congo and Congo-Brazzaville, managing nearly $500 million in revenues.
You need to do more. Especially when they look at you as a young lady, when you are competing with other men in this industry, and the shipping industry is a very high male industry, you have to do more. You have to show that you master what you do.
Mbalai is part of the next generation of young African leaders who are trying to make a difference and to inspire others to aspire for leadership positions.
You need to have the passion first for what you are doing. You need to be highly engaged because it's not easy, especially in our context here in the DRC country, and the same also in Congo. There's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of events that you cannot master, so you always have to be ready to take the right decision at the right time.
Mbalai attributes her accomplishments to partners and supporters. She says her goal is to empower other young entrepreneurs through mentorship programs.
We have to start within ourselves because before leading a business, leading people, it all starts with leading ourselves. You have to know who you are, what are your values, what you are, what makes you fight, what makes you look for better, what is your why. Why do you want to do what you want to do?
Nancy's rise to the top has not been without its challenges.
It requires additional effort from us when we have to compare with men, because you have to do good in all aspects of your life.
With offices in Kinshasa and Matadi, Maersk Line is creating employment and helping businesses in the country to connect with key global markets. For example, Matadi Seaport, the main outlet to the sea, is where most of their exports and imports come through. So when a lot of people are talking about this hidden treasure, they never even mention it in the first place. But I'm surprised to learn that there's just more than actually one port that serves this great country. The Voice of America was recently given an exclusive tour of the new multi-billion-dollar container terminal located at Matadi on the Congo River. The facility opened for business in August 2016 with the help of the Philippines in partnership with the Congolese government and the private sector. The new terminal is fitted with the state-of-the-art security cameras, sophisticated computer systems, modern cargo handling and storage facilities, including a fire engine and an ambulance on site. The new terminal, dubbed a one-stop shop, has dramatically reduced the cost of doing business transactions like railing cargo and paying taxes. It also has restored some faith in the system. However, critics say that even though Maersk Line has made a concerted effort to localize many management positions previously held by experts in Africa, the company still falls short and needs to do more. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Matadi Seaport.
But I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now coming up, we'll tell you why many of Somalia's citizens are taking first aid classes. Stay with us. I want to take you back to where we began in South Africa, where investigations are now being launched into some corruption charges and influence peddling within the government of Mr. President Zuma. We're going to talk to Tinyiko Mululeke, who's a professor, a political analyst at the University of Pretoria, and he joins us live via Skype from South Africa. Good evening, Professor Mululeke.
Good evening. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Now, first, just give us a sense of what this inquiry really means, given that President Zuma himself has to order or has had to instruct that this be done, and the report will be taken back to him.
Yes, the constitution of the country only empowers the president to set up a commission of inquiry of this nature. Only he can do it. But what is a little unusual with this one is that in the report where it was recommended for him to set up this commission, it was also suggested in that report that he be not the one to choose the judge who will chair it. And that judge has been chosen by the Chief Justice of the country rather than the president. And that is a significant departure from the Constitution. And that is because the president himself is subject of investigation in this inquiry.
Now, some of his support have said that this investigation should actually be wider. It should also encompass other private businesses and the kind of influence they have over the government of South Africa. What is your take on this?
The terms of reference are pretty much as suggested in the Public Protector's report. So, in other words, the current terms of reference do not go back beyond the presidency of Jacob Zuma. So, and I think this is only correct to do it this way. Because let's face it, we can have a commission to investigate South African history since the arrival of the Dutch colonists here, or go back to 1910 when the Land Act was put into effect, or go back to 1994 when Mandela became president. That was not the point. The point of this inquiry is to probe the involvement of the executive, particularly the president, in possible corrupt dealings.
And he's living in interesting times where we have Cyril Ramaphosa as the head of the ANC. Do you see this probably as taking him out before even his term is over?
Well, the ANC, which is the ruling party, has confirmed that a decision has been taken that he should leave before the end of his term. Cyril Ramaphosa himself, as the new incoming president of the party and deputy president of the country, has confirmed that Zuma will have to go before the end of his term. So it is no longer a question of whether it will happen, it's a question of when it will happen and how well the party manages it. I think that's what they are concerning themselves with at the moment.
And we will be monitoring developments there. Professor Maluleka, we thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that's... Well, it's time now for Health Report, and joining us now is Africa 54, a health correspondent, Lino Mudu, with the connection between colorectal cancer and diet. Hello, Lino.
Hello, Vincent. That's right. In a new research conducted in the United States, scientists revealed that people who consume lots of foods linked to chronic inflammation may be more likely to develop colorectal cancer than individuals who tend to avoid these foods. The researchers examined more than 2 decades of U.S. survey data on eating habits and cancer diagnosis for more than 74,000 female nurses and more than 46,000 male health professionals. Individuals with diets that were most likely to cause inflammation were 32% more likely to develop colorectal cancer during the study. They say pro-inflammatory diet include high intake of red meat, processed meat, refined grains, and sugary beverages, and a low intake of green leafy vegetables. Experts say not smoking, maintaining a normal weight, and taking aspirin are associated with a lower risk of colon cancer. The research was published in the journal JAMA Oncology. Now, the Nigerian government launched a mass vaccination campaign Thursday with support from the World Health Organization and partners to prevent the spread of yellow fever in the country. More than 25 million people will be vaccinated throughout 2018 in the planned campaign, which officials say is going to be the largest yellow fever vaccination drive in the country's history. The immunization plan is part of efforts to eliminate yellow fever epidemics globally by the year 2026. The preventive campaign will use vaccines funded by Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and will be supported by United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF. Across Somalia's capital city, citizens are taking first aid classes so they can learn how to respond and help out after accidents and attacks. Men and women in Somalia are being encouraged to sign up for free first aid classes being held at a university in Mogadishu. Their goal is to help improve rescue missions in the country. Organized by Somalia's only free ambulance service, Amin Ambulance, the program is meant to equip ordinary people with the needed skills to respond to various emergency situations.
It is necessary for everyone who lives in Somalia, especially Mogadishu, to take first aid training because our country is always in crisis, and it is important for us to help people whenever there is a need.
The reason I enrolled for first aid training is that I saw a girl getting burned at the site of an explosion, and I didn't know how to help her, so I decided to take lessons to educate myself.
About 152 students have enrolled on the program, which started in December. Students attend a one-month training course that includes responding to staged emergencies. They learn how to help sick or injured people before the first responders arrive. The volunteers are awarded certificates when they complete the training course. Dr. Abdikadir Adem is a dentist and director of Amin Ambulances.
We are in emergency country. Explosions and accidents can happen at any time, and it can happen wherever and whenever, and we don't know when it will happen. So, as our service is not, as large as we want, we want to have a lot of volunteers, those who can help the patients before we came and after we came, so that we decided to start this kind of first aid training. So everyone will get the advantage of it, and so many people will have a first aid training.
Somalia has been mired in conflict since 1991. The ambulance service started in 2008, and the fleet of second-hand ambulances has gained a good reputation for its swift response to emergencies, providing vital support in Mogadishu. The initiative is funded by donations from medical students as well as local businessmen. Dr. Abdirahman says first aid awareness is sorely lacking in the country.
They don't know the importance of the emergency training. So this is one challenge, as they don't know the importance of it. The other challenge is the government side. They are not ready to help us because they have their own problems, they have their own peace, and it is also kind of neglected. I don't know what to say, but we don't get the support from the government.
Amin Ambulance is planning to expand beyond the capital to make emergency healthcare services accessible to more Somalis.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter @LenorMoudou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, Lenore, thank you very much. Now be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. And it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Rwandan women turn to traditional art to support their families. We'll be right back.
In the Central African Republic, President Faustin Touadéra calls on armed groups in the Pawa region to end the violence. In Libya, funeral services begin for victims of twin car bombings that killed 33 people at a mosque in Benghazi. In South Africa, police ramp up security outside the Horse School Overval as protests continue against the Afrikaans Middle School not accommodating English-speaking students. In South Sudan, 2 Kenyan pilots seized by rebels after their plane crashed near Akobo, killing 1 person. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, UN Joint Human Rights Offices says that extrajudicial and arbitrary executions by security forces grew by 146% in 2017 due to the crisis in the Kasai region.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. The French Riviera city of Nice is testing a mobile phone app that will allow people to record and report crimes to local police in a matter of seconds. The app, called Reporty, is being tested by 2,000 volunteers. Best known as a sunshine magnet for tycoons and wealthy pensioners, the traditionally right-wing city is already equipped with more surveillance cameras than any other French city. An Islamist militant killed more than 80 Bastille Day revelers on Nice's Palm Line Sea Promenade in 2016. Next up, the traditional art form of imigongo is unique to Rwanda and uses the rather unusual material of cow dung. The first imigongo paintings date back to the 18th century and are still as popular as ever. The popularity of this art is helping generate income for Imigongo artists to support their families. Just like in the past, today's paintings are mostly made by artisan women in villages in the Kirehe district close to the Rwandan-Tanzanian border. The art cooperative currently employs 15 women. Almost all of them are genocide widows. Well, and finally, 2 monkeys have followed in the footsteps of Dolly the sheep by becoming the world's first primates to be cloned in the same way. The cloning process begins with a monkey egg and a fetal monkey cell that has been cultured in a lab dish. The researchers remove the nucleus, which contains the DNA from the egg. The other cell is slipped into the egg, so it replaces the egg's nucleus with its own. Now, the egg then divides and grows into an early embryo. The embryo is implanted in a monkey and grows to term. The result is a monkey baby that carries the DNA of the fetal donor cell. And that's what's trending today. Now, virtual reality technology allows the user to enter a different world through sight and sound. Now, researchers are adding a sense of touch to the experience, making the virtual world seem even more realistic. The ability to feel an object in the virtual world has quite a few real-world applications. VOA's Elizabeth Lee reports from Las Vegas.
Once immersed in a headset, virtual reality allows you to see and hear a different world all around you. But for most VR products on the market,
you cannot hold an object in virtual reality.
Researchers in haptics, the feeling of touch, are incorporating this sense into virtual reality.
You can just strap it, it's magnetic.
The French company Go Touch VR created these devices called VR Touch to wear on the fingertips. Pressure is applied that correlates to what the user is seeing and doing.
That will open enormous possibilities,
including allowing users to train in a safe virtual environment. Ideally, for training purposes, the user would have 3 of the VR Touch on each hand. That way, when you are in the virtual reality content, you can easily move things around.
For example, for surgical preparation, you can interact with the patient and prepare yourself for the operation later on.
Another application can be found in advertising.
You can, for example, visit an apartment, virtual apartment. You can open a cabinet, you can touch the bed, feel its softness, and that generates a physical connection with the buyer that can increase the chance of sale.
Go Touch VR hopes this device will interest content producers, major corporations, and even the military, as virtual reality is more widely used in the real world. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News, Las Vegas.
Well, and that's our show for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Woodwork is any part of a house or building that is made of wood.
Crawl out of the woodwork.
This expression sounds troubling.
I won! I have the winning lottery ticket.
Oh, that's great. How much money did you win?
I won $25,000. But please, don't tell anyone.
You're right.